So I'm imagining you're on the call because you're a little curious about initiation, maybe a lot curious, maybe just feeling a little bit nosy and like, oh, I like to hang out on a Tuesday evening and see what's going on. So I want to kind of, just say a little bit about where I've come from and why I do what I do. And I've been in the field of working with women for nearly 30 years now, and it's a real passion of mine. And my own journey around working with women is quite interesting, because when I was younger, I just was not interested in being around women at all. I only hung out with either men, my partners, or men, or I had a strong kind of connection with the people who were on the margins and the fringes, which nowadays obviously is becoming much more a bit more integrated, which is a sort of non-binary world. And this friend who was very involved in women's work said to me one day, she said, "Oh, why don't you come along to a women's circle? It's really beautiful. You get and you sit and you chat with women and kind of get to connect." And I just looked at her and I said, "Why would I want to sit in a circle of competition?" I just saw women as this huge threat, like either a threat to the men that I was trying to chase, or just that all my insecurities about being a woman and not feeling like I was enough and not feeling, comfortable in myself. It just felt, oh my God, that's just going to shine a massive spotlight on me. Why would I want to go and do that? So further down the line, cut a long story short, she convinced me to come on a day-long workshop for women. This is like back when I was in my 20s. And we sat in circle and the women started sharing and, and just really sharing from their heart and sharing some of the stuff that had gone on for them in their life. And I just sat there crying for about 4 hours. And the tears that I felt were in part a feeling of resonance and recognition, like, oh my God, you're telling my story. I didn't know there were other women who had the same experiences as me. And it was incredibly affirming. And also a lot of the grief I felt was the sadness of having not found this sooner. And that kind of led me on the path. So over many, many years, I've done lots of work with women and with human beings in general and all kinds of things. But my particular passion about women is how can we bring this deep feminine, it's what I call the deep feminine current. So it's not as opposed to anything else, but there's this deep feminine current in all of us, in all humans, in all people. But there's a particular way in which we can tap into it if we're women with wombs. And this training is specifically for women who identify as women who are what I call womb-based. And you may have not have your womb anymore, but that you're connected, you have a sense and a resonance and identity around that, and that you're interested in this deep feminine current. And my passionate belief is that the biggest reason that we're in the mess we're in on planet Earth right now is because of the suppression, the denial, the violation and the destruction of this deep feminine current on planet Earth for hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of years. And this deep feminine current doesn't just live in women, it lives in all of us. And it is, in a way, the natural world to a large extent. And we have just done everything we can to manipulate it, control it, destroy it, violate it, abuse it, mistreat it, modify it. I mean, there's absolutely everything. And for me, this time that we're in now, it couldn't be more ripe that we need to find this deep feminine current. And this training, this leadership path is really fundamentally about that, because we've got plenty of leadership in the world that is what we might say from the masculine, both in women and in men and in all humans, wherever we are on the gender spectrum. There's been a strong emphasis on leading from the masculine, and so many of us have aspired to that, even as women. And it's really time to create some balance. This isn't about pushing something else away and replacing it with this, but it's saying this needs to be reinstated. And what I mean by the deep feminine current is a whole bunch of things which culturally are seen as sort of secondary things of value. For example, intuition, our feeling nature, creativity, beauty, working with our hands, embodiment, sensitivity, nurture, care, playfulness. These kind of things are seen in our culture, in our kind of evolved Western world. They're lovely things, but they're not really the important things now, are they? We need to go out and, you know, do the important stuff like work hard and, you know, earn money, and not be doing this frivolous stuff like creativity. I mean, where's that ever going to get us? You know, that kind of thing. And of course, we do need to go and survive. You know, we do need to do what we need to do to make sure we've got our basic needs covered. But I don't see it that the other things that I've just listed come after that. I want to flip it right around and say, without those things that I just listed as the foundational roots of our existence, we will perpetually feel like life is just pointless, exhausting, that we're burnt out, run down, and what's the bloody point? So this is what I mean by feminine leadership. We have to bring back the understanding and reclaim it in an embodied way, these ways of being. These ways of being. I absolutely believe that beauty, for example, is not a frivolous luxury. Like, you know, I look at all the buildings that have been built in our modern cities, and you look at the buildings that were built 300-400 years ago, and there's a whole load of stuff on those buildings that's really completely unnecessary, that doesn't really have a practical function. Why do they bother? You know, there is a point, because when we look at a building like that, when we go into a building like that, when we experience a building like that, we have a different experience to here's 4 walls and a pile of bricks, and it's just doing the basic minimum. You know, when we're in nature and we're surrounded in a space by beauty, by trees, by wildflowers, by birdsong, by the natural beauty that's around us, our capacity to learn is massively amplified. Our capacity to do healing work is massively enhanced, because we're being nourished at like a soul level. You know, it's like sending a child into a classroom that's artificial structure, which is pretty soulless, that has no sense of nurture in it, or creativity, or joy, or soulfulness. And then you ask a child to learn for 8 hours. I mean, can you imagine how different it would be if those qualities that I've just talked about were the bedrock of a learning classroom? So these are the kind of things that I'm pointing to in this leadership, that we need to really reinstate our sense of our own rootedness, our own embodiment. And the way this leadership path works is, there is some theory in there. There's definitely some theory in there. But the most of it is actually stepping into leadership and looking at all of the things in a really gritty way that get in the way for us as women, like the fear of really speaking our truth and being shot down, being shamed, being condemned, being told shut up and we don't have anything useful to say, you know, that kind of thing. The fear of the exhaustion of feeling like we've got to do it all by ourselves. You know, the kind of oh, and then it's like, I'm never enough. It doesn't matter what I do, it's never going to be enough, because look at the state of the world, and who am I, this little tiny person doing this tiny little thing? What's the point? She's doing so much more. She, you know, I'll leave her to do it. It's just endless, all these internal voices that really stop us from just stepping into bringing our gift to the world. And when I talk about leadership, I don't just mean the women who are really stepping up and sort of doing the kind of big stuff in the world. I'm talking about leadership in how we run our families, how we run our communities, how we run, you know, how we function within the workplace, how we get involved in the street that we live in, as well as the, you know, how do I run a sharing circle? How do I create a charity that I feel passionate about for a cause that I want to be involved in? So it's really at all levels that I'm speaking about this. And that leadership has to come from within our own journey of healing our own wounds, really. It's like we can do all the theory we want. We can read all the books we want. Yeah. And we can put all our focus out there and learn all the techniques of how to hold circle. Well, never say this, always say that. Make sure you light a candle. Make sure the room smells nice. You know, all of this kind of stuff. And it's all important stuff. But if we're not rooted in who we really are, and we're not feeling regulated in our nervous system, and we got a ton of voices in our head going, who the hell do you think you are right now? And just shut up, and nobody wants to, you know, all of those self-sabotaging voices. It's like we're going to make it 10 times harder for ourselves. And the thing is, whatever is happening within us as space holders, that it sits in the field unconsciously. People might not go, oh, I see what's going on there, but we feel it. One of the most powerful things one of my teachers said to me was when I was in my early 30s, they said the most powerful thing going on in the room is the unconscious of the group facilitator. Like the pieces of us that we try to hide and kind of go, oh, yes, all fine. Yes, here we are. So it's wonderful. Let's do this and let's do that. And inside we're like, oh, thank you, you know, and trying to put a nice smile on our face. So what would it be like if we tapped into that deep feminine current and we were vulnerable with our leadership, that we were really honest, that we didn't come from this place of, well, I just want you to know that I'm really sorted, and you know, I've got some things to teach you all, and maybe, you know, one day you'll be as good as me. That isn't the way of the feminine. The way of the feminine is we sit on this horizontal axis where every single woman in the circle is needed. Like we each have something unique to bring, and no one is better or worse or higher or lower or more than or less than. And that's the power of this deep feminine current. And that's what's been, we could say, brilliantly designed over history to keep us disempowered, is to keep us competing with each other, to comparing with each other. But when we collaborate, my goodness, we can move mountains. We can absolutely move mountains. But in order for that collaboration to be really authentic and really real, we have to be willing to look at the shadows that sit in the field, that sits in the feminine field. And that's the power of the group, of how we work in the group. And all the work that I offer is all rooted in working with what I call the soul wound. And the soul wound is that core original imprint that we got from our beautifully well-meaning parents and society as it is, with all its, you know, fuck ups. We learned a kind of a shame wound that in some way or another we're not enough, we're not lovable enough, we're not good enough, we're not bright enough, we're not beautiful enough, we're not nice enough, we're not powerful enough, we're not, or we're too much of this and we're too much of that, and we've got to be a bit more this and a bit less that. And before we know it, we've just like contorted ourselves into this absurd corset of restriction. And that soul wound, and then a resulting belief, a negative belief we have about ourselves. You know, maybe it's that I'm not enough, or I don't matter, or I'm not worthy, those kind of things. It's like we then, everything we do, it's like we do it almost through that filter. You know, we're almost looking for evidence to prove that belief is true in our daily interactions. You know, somebody does something or doesn't do something. Aha, you see, now if I mattered, you wouldn't have done that. You know, if I was enough, da, 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 da. So that, if we step into leadership, if that part of us is in the driving seat, we're toast. We're absolutely toast. We cannot step into our full power and really trust that deep feminine current that is moving through us all the time. So it's not about knowing. It's not about being clever. It's not about being sorted and not having any wounds. It's quite the opposite. It's saying, here I am with all my vulnerabilities, with all my fears, with everything, and I'm going to bring you my gift anyway. And my honesty is the most sort of powerful transmission I can give you in terms of championing you to step up and be the woman that you are. So it's not that we're trying to learn to be a different woman. It's that we're trying to remove the shame and the fear that sits around us like a sort of casing that is hiding the woman that we really are. So it's more a case of gently removing the armor. Hang on just 1 second. Just got something going on in the thing there. Okay. It's about removing that armor. And the key thing here is we can't just rip it off. We've had 30, 40 years of workshops, of people going to workshops. It's like, right, let's rip the whole thing off. Let's just get right in there, a bit of open heart surgery and dig around in there with some, you know, and maybe we have some sort of cathartic experience, some sort of amazing epiphany. And then we go home and it's like, God, we need 2 weeks to recover now. And we can't metabolize what's happening. We can't integrate what's happening. So those days are over, I feel. And all the work that I do, I mean, a big part of what's going to be embedded in this training, which is embedded in all the trainings, is learning how to be trauma informed, learning how to hold space, again, whether that's in your family, it's in your work, it's in the projects that you're doing, however your leadership is showing up in your life, but that we do that from a place of being fully trauma informed, and that we learn how to hold space in such a way that the work we do is done from a regulated nervous system. Because once the nervous system is dysregulated to a certain degree, we need a little bit of stimulation to be able to kind of get in with the juice and you know, have a little exploration. But once we tip over into a certain level of sort of activation in our system, we can't do good work. We just simply can't. So a key bedrock of this is learning, and it starts with us. Where does my system get dysregulated? How do I learn to regulate my system for myself? And then how do I learn to do that and hold space for others from a regulated space, a regulated place? And that is absolutely fundamental. And the big motto is slowing down, slowing down, slowing down, slowing down. And, you know, modeling honesty right now, you know, if I look back over, you know, in my early 30s, the kind of workshops I was running, I mean, now I've just got my head in my hands. Oh my God, it's like I want to apologize to everybody. You know, we were in this massive sort of, you know, let's just start the whole thing out. And, you know, I was acting from my sort of dysregulated system. Everybody in the room, you know, it's like, what were we doing? You know, so it's not to beat ourselves up, but it's to understand that now we have more of an understanding of all of that, and how can we really embed that into this deep feminine current. So we're gonna, you know, on the training, we really cover a lot. And as well as being trauma informed, we also look a lot at EDI, which is equity, inclusivity, and diversity. So, you know, moving away from this model of just holding space for white middle class privileged women in the workshop scene to actually, how do I become a leader within my communities where I live that's gritty and in my life? Because, you know, there is diversity around us, and it's very easy to just keep leaning into the places that feel comfortable. And we need those places to, you know, be with our kin and feel that nourishment. But if we live in a bubble of that, then we're limited as to what we can do in terms of effective work in the world. And the other key thing I would say, I mean, there's so much I could say, but I really want to hear your questions. The other key thing to say is, if you want to work with me, you've got to want to go deep. I'm not interested in sort of splashing around in the shallows and doing sort of plaster sticking work. You know, it's like the people who work with me are people who've already been on this path for a good old while, and you are ready to really go, do you know what? I absolutely want to get a hold of this, and I'm really ready to step into my power. Now, whether we get there or not is another thing. We may or we may not, but that you're coming wanting that. There's an ache really deep down in your soul to say, you know what, I'm up for this. I'm really up for going to the bottom of my well, if that's what it takes. And meeting those places, those exiled places in me that are just waiting to be integrated back in. So that's something to consider if you're looking for a sort of certificate type facilitation training where you can get a few hot tips on, you know, what to do when a woman's upset in a circle, or, you know, we will go into all of that kind of stuff massively. It'll be hugely experiential. It is hugely experiential, but it's not theoretical, and it's not sort of, you know, a booklet of handy tips. I'm going to be, you know, offering you everything I can so that you find that place and practice that place of trusting that deep, deep knowing that's inside you, and how to take the risk of pulling that through rather than letting that voice go, oh yeah, but probably not that. That's what I feel really passionate about, is that deep, deep knowing in you. So you're not learning to do what Jules Wingfield does or anybody else. You're on a journey to discover what your gift is and how you can bring that through. And the support of the other women in the circle is at least 70% of it. It's a huge part of it, not to mention being embedded in nature, which for me is non-negotiable in terms of regulating our nervous system, in terms of resourcing ourselves. So I'm probably about 30%, to be fair. Yeah. So I could waffle on. I could waffle. So I would really love to hear your questions, because I think through your questions you might be able to flesh out a bit more what your curiosities are and what you're kind of leaning into and what your concerns are, or, you know, is this included, is this not included, that kind of stuff. So I'd like to open up the space. Oh my goodness me, so many people ask me this question. I know this question always comes, and it take me quite a while to answer it. So I'm not going to try and answer it on all levels, but I'll give you maybe a few. So, I mean, the first most obvious one is this is only going to be with women in the space, cis women. So that's a really, really key difference. It is much more focused on leadership, and although Circle of Belonging is also leadership in some ways, because leadership is what I'm interested in and leadership is what I'm bringing, this is primarily around leadership from the deep feminine current. Whereas Circle of Belonging, number one, the circle is really diverse. So we're going to be learning about how to step into creating the lives we want to have and the communities that we want to be in, and being in leadership and all of that. But there's much more of an emphasis on our own personal work and building community.
Okay.
Whereas this is more about how can I be supported into stepping up into leadership and taking that back into my life and tending to my communities. There's no such thing as stupid questions, so anyone can ask anything. I can actually, and I'm just on the website because all the dates and stuff are on the website, but I can, hold on, I can go through it with you. So basically there's 5 modules, which are residential, and they go from a Wednesday to a Sunday, and we start in the springtime, and then we go through all 4 seasons of the year. So we'll be meeting through different times of the year so that we can actually work with the rhythms and the cycles that are happening in our bodies. So for women who are still bleeding, they'll be very connected to that. Women who are post-bleed will be working still with that cyclical sense, but we'll be leaning into the external seasons, if you like, that are mirrored inside us. So we'll be working with nature in that way. So there's 5 really deep kind of residential immersions, and they're over 5 days. And then there's also optional sort of bi-monthly Zoom calls between those so that we can kind of check in, how we're doing, what's happening. I might give you a little bit more kind of, you know, input or teachings or little kind of practices to do, but it's mostly to find out how's what we've been doing in the time that we meet, how is that landing in your life? Yeah. Because I think your question is really, really key, because it comes back to what I was saying to you at the beginning. You know, in the original sort of workshop world, we'd sort of go off for a weekend somewhere, have this sort of big experience, and then go back to our lives and go, what? You know, like the bridge is just too far to chasm. So I've got a real passion around that. So the whole point of this, the reason that it's over a whole year and it isn't just a standalone event, is so that precisely that you can start to learn how to integrate this into your life and how to actually have it make sense in your life. You know, so I'll be giving you practice. Each module will focus on a particular thing, and then you'll be given like homework to do where you can go into your life and say, okay, so between now and the next module, this is what you're going to be exploring. And you won't just be doing it on your own. You'll be doing it with the support, the encouragement and the support of the other women. So you might be collaborating with another woman, or you might be on a Zoom call with her, or you might be, you know, all of that kind of stuff, because, you know, it's so important that you can find a way to make this make sense in your life. Otherwise, what's the point? What is the point? It's just a series of groovy retreats where you get to sort of be yourself for 5 days, and then you have to pack it all away and go back to your life. And I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in this making sense in your life. Like, in a way, what we do on those 5-day modules is the practice for the real work when you go back into your life. You know, it's very un-British to sort of, you know, speak well of oneself, but I have had dozens and dozens of women over 25 years of doing this say this is the most life-changing thing they've ever done. And at one point, I even thought on the agreements, I should actually ask people to sign a thing, because, you know, women leave relationships, leave jobs, change jobs, you know, it's gonna really go to the absolute core. That's why I'm saying I work deep. You know, you got to want to be ready to really look at your life and go, do I want my life to work? And what is in the way? And how am I going to move towards that? And be willing to really get in there, into the mud and the grit, and have a good old dig around. And yeah, see what's needed. Yeah, thanks. Great question. Great question. I really get your question, and it's interesting because over the years I've sat with various kind of configurations in terms of the structure and tried to make it less, for exactly the reason that you say, to make it more accessible. It's not so much time out and all of that. And the more trauma informed I get, the more I'm not willing to negotiate on that, because I see that what it takes for that change to really happen is the format that I have now. It can't be any less. What I would say, and I really get, you have your commitments to your family and the people around you who need you. And are you a mum? Okay, I'm going to give you one of the big teachings of the deep feminine current. Unless we are resourcing ourselves, we cannot hold space with others without a huge cost. So you are doing incredible work in the world already. Yeah. Like being a foster carer. I mean, you know, thank you. You know, it's like you're doing incredible work, and, you know, a lot of people rely on you. A lot of people are looking to you to hold space for them. Where do you get held? Where do you resource yourself? Where do you come back to yourself and find that new ground, that deepening into yourself, so that you can be even more effective when you're holding space there? So in that way, I would say, you know, you got to consider, you know, what will it cost you not to do it in the long run? How effectively, you know, because so many women come to this work in their 50s, in burnout, in menopause, going, oh, fucking hell, you know, I've been everything to everyone for the last bloody 30 years, and I'm, you know, swearing and fucking they've had enough, and everyone can just fuck off, you know, and it's like they've tipped too far over. So I'm saying, don't wait until that happens. You know, it's the feminine leadership is looking at a model of leadership that is sustainable. Look at what we're doing to the planet. It's not a sustainable model because it's not within feminine leadership model. It's like, just keep exploiting, keep asking her for more, keep getting more resources from the bloody ground, more and more and more. We don't let her have a winter. We don't let her replenish. And now look at the state we're in. It's the same with women. We just constantly try to be in the spring and the summer. So, you know, if I was to be really blunt with you, I'd say, can you afford not to? It can be a really big ask. And I'm gonna take a risk here to say that I can hear two strands as you speak. I can hear a very wise woman who's like, yeah, you're on it. You know, it is a big ask and there's going to have implications, and you've got to kind of navigate that. And I can also hear maybe the part of you that puts yourself further down the pecking order of needs. You know, can I ask this of others? Can I ask for this much support? Can I, you know, oh, that's putting a lot on them, you know. And where are you, do you see what I mean? You're right in there with it. You're grappling with, you know, how can I do this thing when I've got all these responsibilities and I want to be the best I can to all these people, and if I step out the mix, they've all got more to do. How can I be at peace with that? How can I feel all right about that? That's the work right there. I think what you're saying, I can imagine there's like many women who are going to relate to it. So yeah, it's really, really great to bring that. I don't think so. I mean, we have people coming from all over the place, Scotland and Norfolk and East London, all kinds of things. We lift share. And also, the reason that it's 5 days is because the last day is completely devoted to integration. So it's not like, oh, we're doing deep work, Sunday, 4 o'clock, right, flung out the nest. No, that's not the feminine. That's not the way of the deep feminine. So Sunday is all about, how do we now get to a place where we can get in our car feeling resourced and almost looking forward to the journey as an opportunity to just let everything kind of work its way through. So by the time I get home, I feel like I've had time to process. And for you, that's going to be great, because that would be like quite a few hours. I mean, the other thing is you could always get a train so that you don't have to drive. You know, there'll be lots of lift sharing. There's usually a fair bit of lift sharing goes on. So you might get a lift all the way to London, for example, and then pick up your car in London and, you know, do the like that.
Okay.
So I definitely don't think it rules you out. I mean, I don't encourage women to fly because I sort of feel a bit passionate about not flying. So I don't take women who come from abroad, but there are many women who want to come from abroad. I think for me, I'm very clear that I'm not giving you any indoctrination. You don't have to follow like any kind of spiritual indoctrination. Personally, for me, I feel, you know, nature is my God, if you like. You know, spirituality for me is the more than human world, and what I would call the mystery, that sort of exists beyond what's tangible. But it doesn't require you to sign up to my version of spirituality. You know, it's like I would never want to inflict my you know, views on that, and I wouldn't be saying anybody else's was wrong. Do you know what I mean? It's the diversity of the circle that makes it rich. Yeah, because you're not learning to lead Jules's way. My role is to empower you and champion you to lead your way and bring what you're doing into the world. So if your version of spirituality was at the heart of what you wanted to bring, then you'd be supported in that. Thank you. Such a great question. So the foundation of the training and what we do on the first module that we're gathering is we spend pretty much the whole time getting to the kind of essence of what our core wound is, finding out what that is, finding out what the negative resulting beliefs is, finding out what style our protectors are, what we do when we're triggered, all of that sort of stuff, and then putting practices in place that mean that in the moment, we've got ways that we can start to work with that. And it is difficult to describe it. I'm not trying to be evasive, because it's quite subtle and nuanced, and it takes a whole day to teach you that. So I don't think I can kind of go, oh, well, you stand up and you wave your left arm and then you say this, you know. It's like it's so much more complex and nuanced, and it requires this quality of holding to be able to give you those teachings. But fundamentally, I could say it like this: it's like the work is giving you methods that mean that your kind of clear and whole and mature woman is in the driving seat, and the parts of you that are wounded or insecure or feeling in shame or who get triggered, you know, all of that part, we're learning to come into a relationship with her so that she feels that she can relax and she's not the one out the front trying to do everything. Yeah, that's the point. We're not trying to heal her. We're not trying to get rid of her. We're not trying to bury her. We're not trying to improve her. We're just loving her. We're loving her so deeply that she feels like she can relax and not be in a constant cloud of shame. And then our whole woman can be like, okay, right, yeah, I'm holding space. Yeah, but I don't want to hold space. It's okay, I got this. You don't have to do anything. It's all right, I got this. Yeah, so it's helping. It's being the parent to her that we never had. Holding that really strong, unconditional, loving presence. And that takes practice. We've got first of all, we've got to get to know her before we can genuinely love her or genuinely be empathic towards her, and all those things that we look for out there in others. Oh, if only you could be more kind to me, if only you could be more, if you could listen better, if you could. We're going to be learning, well, how can I be those things for her, that one inside, so that I'm not dependent on others to do that. Yeah. So the other thing I would say in terms of sort of method, if you like, is we slow everything right down. Less is more. And, you know, X times 10 minus. So we're just taking everything so much slower and learning to find ways that slowness is actually just our natural way of being, so that when we get so rooted in that slowness that when we leave and we go back into the world, we can just go, okay, maybe I can stay with this slowness, or maybe I can remember this slowness more often when I'm in those situations that are stressful. Yeah, so everything is embodied. Everything that we do it's looking at the sort of the four strands of us, our you know, our physical self, our emotional self, our mental self, and our spiritual self. So all the practices kind of encapsulate those four dimensions of who we are. Some of them might be like learning to communicate in certain ways. Some of them may be about how we sit in ourselves in a particular way. Some of them might be about leaning into nature and listening and being guided by her or held by her in various ways. We might be looking to the more than human world for guidance. Moving, doing like embodied dance move practices, doing body work with our energy, helping to move and shift energy. And more than anything, just getting in there and practicing holding space and in those ways that would really, oh, don't make me stand up and talk in front of everyone. I can't, you know, but it's like, I'm not going to just fling you out the nest and go stand up, you know, but doing things that get us close to going, okay, I can do it. And having a space where there's full permission. In fact, it's encouraged to take risks, fuck up and fall over. So that there's a loving space where when that happens, we can just go, yeah, of course, all right, of course. Because if we can't do that, how are we going to ever find the courage to take risks? Yeah, so we create a loving environment, a supportive environment, so that we can go, oh, I'm going to try this. It's just, I'm terrified, you know, and feel what it's like. The maximum number I work with is 12 on this training. And that's specifically because because of what I want to give you and the structure and the different modules, I want to make every woman I want to give every woman a particular set of things. So with more than 12, I can't do that. And also with more than 12 women, it's easier to hide.
Yeah.
I really like the intimacy. I used to run really big groups before the menopause. Hit the menopause, that all changed. Because it's like big groups are great. You've got this big energy and it's just wild and it's like, wow. But actually, it's much harder to keep our nervous systems regulated the bigger the group gets. So this 12 seems to be, over a few years, I've done 12 now, and I feel like we can keep a quality of intimacy with that many women. Once you go past that, it becomes more difficult.
Okay.
So yeah, you won't be able to hide. That's true. So if you're looking to hide, then this isn't the training for you. If you're looking to just do a tick box exercise of saying, I did a facilitation training, la, 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 and you don't actually really want to do the work, then yeah, that's maybe not the thing.
Okay.
To be honest. Yeah. So thank you. It's really, really good questions. Got a couple of minutes. Is there anyone who has a burning question that they haven't asked because they're feeling like, oh, I can't ask Debbie? I mean, it's still the same. There's still prerequisites, but I've just changed the application process. So because the prerequisite used to be that you had to have done something with me. Now I'm like, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be with me, but I have to get a sense of the work that you have done, so that I know that that we can go deep as a circle together. So that process is, you do the one-on-one Zoom with me. You fill out that application, which in itself is a process because it's going to get you thinking about, there's a lot of quite kind of leading questions in there, and it will get you really chewing over it, like why do I want to do this, and what am I looking to get out for it, and what's the thing that I most want to look at, and all of that sort of stuff. Then we have a one-to-one Zoom. And in that Zoom, we'll really go through, you know, what is it you're looking for? What work have you done? Do you feel ready for this? And you might, you know, we might get to, we don't or we do, you know, that's what that call is for, so that we can really establish that. So I just broadened it out a bit because I realized it was a bit limiting to go, you have to have done this with me, because there are other fantastic women doing equally fantastic stuff. And I thought, well, as long as I can get a feel for that, then that's great. I mean, where I come from with it is set out with the intention of being able to do all the dates, you know, and
Yeah.
it doesn't mean you can't do it, but of course you'll lose out on something, you know, and that's
Yeah.
your shout really at the end of the day. I wouldn't say, oh, don't do it because you've missed one.
Right. Right.
But I say, you know, you wouldn't want to miss more than one. Yeah. So no, it wouldn't be the end of the world. And if that's the only thing in the way, then I would say it's, you know, life is life, isn't it? None of us have got a perfect setup. So yeah, but that's a really good question. Thank you. So as an incentive, so you've seen, I don't know if you've seen on the website, but there's a sister ticket. So a sister ticket works. This is because my work is so much about community and collaboration and bringing us together. If you book the sister ticket, you get a massive discount off. So the sister ticket is, you know, you want to go with a friend or whatever. And if you both book at the same time, then you both get the discount. And what Esmeralda will do is she'll send out an email, and you can now be a sister with any of the women's on this call. So if you're thinking, oh, I really want to sign up, I wonder if any of the other women that were on this call tonight want to sign up, then we'll send out an email and with you. And if you want to be in that, you can add your details and then hook up in that way. So that's the sister ticket. The other thing on offer, and you can't have both of these, you can only have one of these. If you just want to book for yourself, we're offering a 15% discount, but you have to book by the 7th, midnight on the 7th of February. Is that right, Esmeralda? Yeah. So that's next Tuesday. And then you would get a 15% discount off the total. So the next step for you would be to book your deposit, which holds you a place in the circle until we've completed module 1, which is talking with me on Zoom one-on-one. Assuming that all goes well and we're like, yeah, great, let's dive in. Then Esmeralda would take you through and book you in and get you all set up. If at the end of that module 1, it turns out for one reason or another, it's not feeling right, then we just send your deposit back. The reason that you need to pay the deposit is because between paying the deposit and doing your module 1, the course might fill up. And you do the module 1 and go, yeah, I want to do it. And it's like, oh no, it's full, you can't. So the deposit just holds your place until that module 1 is completed. We bumped up against that a couple of years ago. We learned it's like you gotta have a way of doing it. So yeah, and then that 15% will be taken off your total. Esmeralda will send an email about all of that, so you don't have to remember any of it, but just wanted to let you know that I feel this year, just to sort of end with, personally, I feel like this year is a powerful year. We've got a powerful year coming up for humanity. We are absolutely, like, everything is opening now. Everything is coming to light. And I just feel that women are needed right now. We, you know, that deep feminine current of knowing, it's like we sit there in our living rooms going, I just know, I can feel it in my bones, and I don't know how to speak about it. I don't know how to bring it. I don't know how to be a part of that. And this circle would utterly give you that support. And that's why I feel, yeah, that I you know, I'll keep doing this until there's no breath in my body, basically. And I feel really passionate about it. And yeah, it would be really lovely to explore that with you. So thank you so much for joining this evening. Really lovely to see your faces. And yeah, do get in touch if you've got questions or you want to take the next step.